All right, so this week again, I have Drew Magic going over the sports bet. If you've been paying attention to any of the option stuff, some pretty good swings yesterday and today. So um, if you want to get in on that, then the premium channel has that. And go ahead, Wes.
So I'm gonna run through the things we're gonna talk about, and then I'll go into detail and everything. I'm gonna touch on. I'm not gonna dive in as deep as we did last week, but I'm gonna revisit an example this week of spread shift and odds shift. We went deep into it last week, but we're gonna touch on another example. I also have a really good example of how to play a game, switching sides and cashing tickets all along the way. We're going to talk about some team records, where they are now, where they're going to end up, just looking at some last year stuff. I'm going to talk about college football, who needs to win and run up scores and who does not. And then Andrew asked that we get a little bit into the Miami call. So that's where we're going to go. You good with that, Rob? All right. So
Yeah, no, yeah, I'm good with that. Sorry, I had it on mute, but
that
yeah, I'm good with that. Go ahead.
That's fine. Just stay on the questions for me, and I'll stop every so often. So last week we took a pretty detailed dive into spreads and odds and shifts. And this week, yesterday, I put up that there's two examples of it that are exactly the same scenario. The Indy Detroit game, on the Detroit side was a minus 125 payoff, and on the Indy side it was a even money. Well, again, in that situation, if there's any more money put on Detroit, we can look for the spread to shift to 2.5, and the odds will shift too. What ended up happening was overnight, it looks like a good amount of money was put on Indy. And so the spread stayed the same, but now the payoff on Detroit is minus 115. Indy went from an even money payout to minus 110. So as I said yesterday, if you are an Indy player or a Denver player, now's the time to place that wager, because a shift like this just happened, and it literally cost 10% of what the payout was. If you waited till today to take Indy on that wager, you'd be receiving $9 on your 10, where yesterday it's an even money payoff. And it's important to look at things like that if to figure out which side you want to be on. And some of those you got to play them early. There's not always huge shifts, but in this case, both of these games, the Denver Chargers game was taken off. I don't know where those odds and where that spread went, but I put up the Denver and the Indy pick, and I laid my action yesterday before it had a chance to move. I wasn't really interested in gaining a half a point on the deal. I was very happy with where the spread sat. So always be looking at that stuff. Another thing I wanted to bring up, we're having a pretty wild NFL season, and NFL has been pretty good to us. And I actually put some numbers together, and I want to understand, or I want to explain to everybody why I was recommending not pressing this week. The kind of record that we're having right now in the NFL would put us in the top 20 in Westgate's super competition. That's a multi-million-dollar payoff to the top handicappers in the world. And I forget to enter it every year, but these are unheard of numbers. So I'm not saying a losing week is coming, because we're finding winners, but it's important to understand where we're at and be cautious going forward, because I don't know that a 23-9 NFL season from a winning percentage standpoint is sustainable. I hope it is. We're going in that direction. I'm working as hard as I can to make sure that we keep putting together weeks like we have in the NFL and in college, but this group would be ranked in the top 20 for Westgate's top handicapper in the world right now. I'm going to get into an example of how you play both sides of a game and you come out winning. And this example, a buddy of mine did this. And so this was actually the Arizona-Seattle game. So a Sunday night game, totally ill-advised. I wouldn't do it. In fact, I shifted away from that game. I posted that for everybody. The second it switched to Sunday night, that just means that there's odd malarkey that's going to take place. But this particular fella, going into the game, no action on the overall game. He had He had Arizona scoring over 3.5 in the first quarter. Seems reasonable, right? A touchdown. Uh, Seattle doesn't have a very good defense. It seemed like a safe play. Well, Seattle scores first, right? Well, now what pops up is first quarter plus 6.5. So as quickly as they scored, Zona's going to have the ball. So it seems like a smart play. So now, uh, as the first quarter ended with Seattle winning 10-7, but Zona scores the touchdown, paid right there. Zona also with that touchdown came within 6.5, paid right there. Oh, and I also want to add, once Seattle scored as quickly as they did, this guy jumped on over 20.5 for the first half on Seattle. That first touchdown was scored in less than 4 minutes. So 2 more touchdowns, highest scoring offense in football, seems like a good place to go. He also jumped on over 28.5 for the game. So two investments are a winner and two going. Well, now first half ends. Seattle covers the 20.5. Um, now we go 27-17 at the half. Well, now Arizona, and I posted that one. Arizona plus 9.5 for the game. These two teams played each other last year, and the margin of victory and defeat was 3 points. So 9.5 in a division game, that just seems like an easy place to go. So now this guy's on Zona plus 9.5, already cashed out 3 times in the first half with 2 more to go. Can't lose at this point. Just simple numbers. 1, 3, 2 more to go. Can't lose. Well, Zona quickly closes the gap. Seattle continues to score. Seattle covers that 28.5. Well, now there's 4 wins and 1 more on the board. Well, at this point, with 8 minutes to go, plus 500 is the payoff on the money line Arizona. Can't lose. You may as well take it at that point. It's worth the risk. Your 100 returns 500. Well, or your 10 returns 50. So at that point, why not do it? The odds are too good, and you can't lose if you're betting even money every step of the way. And that, and Arizona ended up winning the game. And that is how you play a game. No loyalty to either team. You just follow the flow of the game and make your adjustments, and you shift and you cash tickets. And again, once those first 2 wins were in, you got to lose 3 in order to actually be a loser. So you could probably take a little bit of risk with the other 2, because 2 and 2, that's not losing. So I wanted to run through that because, again, ill-advised, it's Sunday night. But if you are to play a Sunday night game, this is exactly the way you do it. You don't go in there with a pregame investment on the overall game.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Why are the in-game, are they better odds, or they seem a little bit better? I mean, it seems like those are a little easier than the original start line.
Yeah, so you have a feel for the game, so you're going to be more confident in what's going on there. But you can catch better odds. Again, the pregame spread was 3.5. The second Seattle scored first, if you're an underdog better at that point, if you were on the Zona side, you now get 10 points or 7 points. They're equally as, if you're going to go into it and your only strategy for the game is live, you don't always get the bets you want, and you have to have really fast fingers in order to jump on them. Over 20.5 points in one half of football is huge. I mean, that's a lot. So that was a ballsy play, but I understand why he did it.
Right. I mean, that makes sense. But who's doing the? I guess who's doing the inline or in-game odds? I mean, it's like on the fly. It's just kind of computer generated, or how? I mean, how
There,
do you get an advantage over in the in-game? Is, I guess, my question.
there has to be a formula to it, and I've asked myself for years, how do point spreads get calculated? I've always wanted to know, what is the math behind it. Uh, there's people far smarter than me that are figuring these things out, but
Well,
um,
I mean, I guess I've heard, how, like, the starting lines are all set up, and I mean, that's seems like they have time to do it, but the in game seems kind of interesting, especially if you think that's something maybe you can not manipulate but have an advantage of. So I was just
well,
wondering.
we're certainly manipulating it because we're jumping on the right ones, but you could just as easily jump on the bad ones. Uh, but if like a first down or even a 5 yard gain, that typically shifts, a half a point, or it'll shift something in the payoff. I don't really know, Rob, to be honest, how it happens or what the reasoning is behind it. But if you follow the flow of the game, there's a lot of opportunities there.
Yeah, and just I mean having the good knowledge base on football and what the teams do sounds like pretty important too.
Yeah, I've said it, a lot of times. Vegas is usually close. They're usually right. So this game ended up a 3 point spread. The pregame was 3.5. It swung the other way, but they were pretty dead on with that margin of victory. So when the game shifted to 9.5, that just seems like a no brainer because Vegas was calling it 3.5. Again, they're not wrong very often. We're just trying to be on the side. We're just trying to be on the right side of that. That's all we're doing here.
No, that's actually a huge. That's actually a great point because if you go back to the initial spread that before the start of the game and kind of use that as maybe a judge of where it would shake out at the end, then maybe you could use the in-game stuff to kind of take advantage of that. That's good stuff.
Yep. All right. I'm going to move on to next and these teams and some records. And I'm going to jump around a little bit, but it's important with some of this stuff. So um, there's only been two winless teams that I really recall, and that's the '08 Detroit Lions and the '17 Cleveland Browns. That being said, the two the worst performing teams last year, uh, there were three teams with under 3 wins, um, and it was Washington, Detroit, and Cincinnati. It was 3 wins, 3 wins, and 2 wins. I bring that up because teams don't just flat out lose. So when do they win? And then you got the best teams. So this part's pretty important to think about too. Last year, the best records in football were 14-2 Baltimore, 13-3 San Francisco, Green Bay, New Orleans. I'm going to throw New Orleans out the window, and I'll get to why. The Chiefs and New England were 12-4. So of the best teams, there's 9 losses there. So if that history repeats of the best teams, before we go to the worst teams, of the best teams, that means the Chiefs are going to lose 3 more games. Pittsburgh, I'm going to use Pittsburgh as an example instead of New Orleans because I think that it makes sense given where Pittsburgh is at 6-0. But if history repeats where they're going to have Pittsburgh's in for 2 to 4 losses. If they were to go 14-2, they have to lose 2 games. If they're going to go 12-4, which probably wins that division, puts them in the playoffs, possibly as a 2 or a 3 seed, that means they got 4 losses coming. So they're not just going to run away with this. We've only seen, unless you were alive in 1972, we've only seen one team go 17-0. And then I look at Buffalo. Buffalo's sitting at 5-2 right now. Last year they were a 10-6 team, which means they got 4 more losses coming to repeat that record. Green Bay, that's another one. They got 2 to 4 losses coming. So, and I'm not talking about spread. I'm talking about outright losses. And then you look at your teams like the Jets. The Jets, they might not win a game. God, we've talked about the Jets way too much. But if they're to be one of the bottom 3 teams consistent with last year's finishing, we're looking at them winning 2 games somewhere. So part of why underdogs are part of why you see 3 underdogs this week is because I'm looking for these dogs. They're gonna happen, and the question is where. So then we look at these 3-3 teams and these 3-4 teams: Detroit, Carolina, Miami. They all have another 3 to 6 wins coming in order to get themselves to either 6-10 or 9-7. And I think Vegas may be a little bit better than that 9-7, but that's kind of where I group them. Then we look at these 2-4 teams and 2-5 teams: Denver, Washington, Philly, Baltimore, New England. They have 2 to 5 more wins coming to get themselves to either 4-12 or 7-9, somewhere in that range. So that's why I'm starting to really look at dogs instead of big spreads and who's covering where. I think the dogs are very important. Most of the time, these dogs that win in odd places like the Jets coming up with a win, that's in the last week where nobody's really playing for anything. At least, historically, that stands out to me the most. Washington is the most interesting one to me because I strongly believe that Washington is winning that division. Um, they're unbettable. I believe that whole division is unbettable, but I do believe Washington is going to win it. And there's probably 2 to 5 wins, maybe even 7 wins there for them somewhere. But I just wanted to give a little explanation as to what I'm starting to look at going forward, because 6-0 is not going to stay 6-0. 5-2 Buffalo is not going to stay there. 5-2 Buffalo might even end up at 9-6, and it's important to look at those things because teams don't just run away and teams don't just roll over and die. And then there's this whole clump of teams in the middle that are 9-7, 8-8, and it just had the Bears right now. They're 5-2, and they were 8-8 last year, so they got some more games to lose. Um, Rob, we good? Before I
I
move on
mean,
to the next,
yeah,
you
we
got
were.
questions?
No, I just don't like you saying the Bears losing, but besides that, we're good.
I don't like seeing them lose. I I don't like seeing them lose. I don't like talking about them lose. But their record is probably a little overstated at this point.
No, I agree totally, and I mean, I'd rather make money than worry about that.
Yeah. So I'm the strategy I'm taking going forward is these teams that I'm looking at as the teams that are probably gonna have some of the better records. I'm going to be overly cautious about Kansas City and Baltimore and Green Bay, and Pittsburgh for sure, because losses are coming. We just don't know where, and they're probably not going to come. These teams don't really have marquee games coming up either. You're not going to see Kansas City go against Pittsburgh and KC beat Pittsburgh or vice versa. Pittsburgh's going to lose to a Jacksonville that we never saw coming, and it does happen. Who knows why? But all right, I'm going to get into these college teams, and I just picked a handful of them, but uh, I guess in some way I'm saying safe, not safe. But I'll tell you, the college teams that absolutely need to score and need to light up the sky in order to have a chance at the playoffs. Because college, it's all based on the playoffs. In the NFL, it's simple math. If you win enough games, you win your division, and you have a chance at the playoffs. Um, and that's just how it goes. In the NFL, the Tennessee Titans finished 9-7, but they mathematically made it to the playoffs, and they got into the tournament and found their way into the Final Four last year. And a 9-7 team, or a team with a 56% win average, that team would be nowhere in college. But in college, it takes a little bit more. I'll tell you right now, the teams that absolutely need to score and light up the sky is Georgia. Georgia lost to Bama. They're a one-loss team. If they win out and they find their way into the SEC championship game and beat Bama again, maybe. But if they're going to have a chance, they need to light up the sky every single time they play. Cincinnati's another one. Cincinnati is not going into the playoffs. They're an American athletic team, but they're ranked. I think they're ranked number 9 right now, and they're the highest ranked Group of 5 team right now, and in order for them to get in, they got to score. Florida and BYU are both in the same situation. And as much as I've talked in the past about BYU, I'm not prepared to put an investment on them. That team looks real. That quarterback is going to be a first-round draft pick. But BYU, if there was going to be a Group of 5 team to make their way into the playoffs, it would be BYU this year. But they need to keep beating teams by 40. Florida, same deal. Florida lost a game that they shouldn't have lost, and they're going to need to light up the scoreboard. And I believe they play Georgia at some point, so they'll get their chance at a signature win. If you go to the teams Ohio State, they're in the middle as far as I'm concerned, because they need to win out. If they win out, they're in, and that's just how it works with any Big Ten team. They're ranked number 3. They were ranked number 5 before they ever played a game. So I'm saying I'm confident in saying these teams that need to light up points, I would feel more comfortable with them covering a big spread or even a soft spread at that matter than I would be with a Notre Dame that's going to take a knee and with 1 second to go and miss the field goal and screw us all. At this point, I'm saying Alabama. Alabama does not need to cover any spread. They just need to hunker down and win out. They have 2 signature wins. They've won against number 13 and number 3 team already this year. They don't need to light up the scoreboard. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they started calling off dogs and planning for COVID and getting some, like what Rob talked about earlier a couple weeks ago, starting to get some of those second and third stringers practice. Clemson, they absolutely do not need to light up the sky. And Notre Dame, I would actually put in that same category, even though we don't touch Notre Dame. It's not the luck of the Irish. You're a fool if you bet Notre Dame. I'm sorry to say that. And if it insults anybody, I'm sorry, but that's not a safe place to put money. But Notre Dame and Clemson will both have their shot at each other. And if they win out, they're in the playoffs. Neither team needs to light up the sky. Clemson last week only beat Syracuse by 26, and I'm pretty sure that they did not cover that spread in doing so. This week for Clemson is a bit trappy, which is why I laid off of it. They're playing Georgia Tech with Notre Dame the following week. Absolute definition of a trap game. Notre Dame is extremely trappy this week too. North Carolina, Miami. They don't need to light up the scoreboard either. They just need to win, because if they do, they're going to get their shot at winning this ACC. Oregon, USC, once we get into the Pac-12, and then Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State does not need to score points. This is usually a high-powered offense that we can count on to score 40 points a game, but they don't need to because of how bad the Big 12 is. No, they're one of the only teams. Actually, they might be the only team in the Big 12. So these don't need to score points. As you're choosing the portfolio for the week, really look at these teams that don't need to score and take a couple steps deeper into the breakdown. But I would really think about that. I liked North Carolina this week, and they still may cover the spread. It's only 6.5, but they fall into that category of if it comes to them, because they know that they just simply need to win. We good? You got any questions coming in on the page?
Really see any questions? Let me go ahead and ask questions here. Oh, good stuff. So, what was the record you said so far? Did you include college as well on
No,
your picks this year?
I just did NFL, but I have the college record, and I was counting just flat out posted picks. I wasn't counting any, little memos, but it looks like we are 37-23
That's total.
total. And again, that doesn't include any live bets. That's just flat out the picks that I post on Thursday and walk away from.
Okay, and the NFL record?
NFL, we are looking right now at 23-9.
That's pretty impressive.
Well, it's scary to me. So I appreciate you saying it's impressive, and thank you for that. But it is very scary to me because 55% is what a career sharp is shooting for, and we're, I think, 60-61 right now, which is great. But I'm wildly scared, and I'm actually putting more time into these games now than I was weeks ago.
Oh, that's great. That's what we like to hear.
Yeah. What else you got?
I really don't have any questions. Andrew just asked, Georgia spreads up to -17 or -17.
Yeah, I would still take it. I loved it at the 15, but I would still take it. If you look at their margin of victory in the games that they've played, I think you'll find some comfort there.
And then Muhammad just asked about weather impact, anything, or last minute trades.
Yeah, these last minute trades. So I mean, I'll talk weather too, but these last minute trades, I kind of put them in the same thought process of what we had talked about a few weeks ago in the value of a player. So you're not going to see any top 5 quarterbacks being traded right now. I mean, I think Muhammad's probably referencing Des Bryant and and Antonio Brown. But I think we go back. These are star wide receivers. They haven't seen the field in over a year, but they're star wide receivers, so they could be worth 2 to 4 points. But then you got to look at where they're going. Um, I think Antonio Brown, if you're looking to him to give you an advantage in Tampa, I think that you're probably mistaken. I think that it's going to take. I think that he's probably going to see less balls in Tampa this first week or two than any possibility, because I just they're going to try and discipline him and make him understand that he's a part of a team, and you're going to shut your mouth and you get what you get. And Tampa's winning without him. They're adding him as depth. I don't see them bringing him in and lighting up the sky with him. I just don't see that happening.
Whoa. Let me ask you this, because I have Tampa to win the Super Bowl on a long shot kind of bet. But let me ask you
Yep.
this: you don't think Tom Brady brought him in specifically and is going to do whatever he wants and throw to him regardless?
Yeah, but for the purpose of this game coming up, and even the second game, 2 weeks from now, I don't see that changing a spread, or I wouldn't put any type of stock into that. I would not say, "Oh my God, they signed Antonio Brown. Let's go and let's play him." That's I wouldn't use it as your reasoning for playing Tampa this week.
No.
I think that it ultimately gives them an advantage, and Tampa is even more unstoppable now that they have that option. But I don't think they brought him in to put them over an edge. I think they brought him in for depth. And I think that there's a personality piece there that's going to need to be managed. And I think that Bruce Arians is going to set that tone with him early.
No, and I mean I agree with that completely. I think anything that's as far as spreads and stuff's already baked in with
Yeah.
Antonio Brown. So actually, I'd minimize it, just like you're saying. But longer term for the season and possibly what I want to happen, right? I mean,
Well,
it's obviously a big benefit.
well, how do you stop them? How do you stop them? There's no team that has four great corners to put on the field to stop them. So long term it's a good play, but in the short term I don't really put stock in that as a reason to bet for or bet against. I see Tampa taking the field and being the same team as they would have been if they had not made that move. And I see the Dez Bryant thing. Dez ended up in Seattle, isn't that where he went? Anybody?
I don't have that right here. Ravens, right? Out to you. No, that's something I don't have it.
All right. Well, he might have a little bit different impact, because I thought it was Seattle that he went to, and that will make a little bit of a difference, but I don't think it does in the short term. There's a chemistry between quarterbacks and wide receivers. Now a star wide receiver being injured, that's a different thing than just bringing in a new guy off the street, especially these two guys that haven't played in a year plus.
Yeah, it's a Ravens signed 3 years, right? 2 days ago.
Yeah, I mean that's a good move, and I think that ultimately that'll help them. That'll help them out tremendously. But the way that the Ravens are going to win football games is not through the air. So again, in the next 2 weeks, I don't know that I factor that into my strategy and call it worth even a point. And the Ravens, they're about to play Pittsburgh. That game is just going to be a slugfest, and nobody is taking any type of unnecessary risk in that game. That's going to be a control the time of possession and punch each other in the mouth kind of game. That's just what it is. And so,
any weather impact?
Yeah, so weather, I think it does have an impact, and I think that I don't know that I would stay away from a game because of snow. I would look at travel, but I would also in the belief with a snow game is that you take the team that could run the ball better, that plays better defense, and you kind of stay away from the track meet type of teams. Kansas City last week is kind of the exception to that, but they've been playing odd football. Kansas City, right now, it looks like they're just practicing with the rest of the league. They're trying to run the ball. They're trying to get themselves into playoff mode, and that's just what it looks like to me. But snow, I would take the team that runs the ball better and has better defensive line, or just flat out walk away from it, because it's just too much unknown. And again, most powerful thing you can do is walk away from a game. You lost nothing. So I don't look at the weather. I don't look at the weather forecast much, though.
All right. Last question is the Miami game discussion that you said you were going to talk
Yep,
about.
that's where I'm going. Well, Andrew was interested in the Miami and the Tua impact. Well, I actually like the game having nothing to do with Tua. I think I look at Tua as just a bonus here, but I'm not going to dive in too deep because when I dive deep into games, there's this odd jinx, and I don't want to go there because I like this pick. And but at first glance, I looked at the Rams coming off of their two largest wins. Okay. The two largest wins that they had this season was a 37-19 win. They lost the following week. A 37-10 win. They lost the following week. Now they're coming off of, I believe, 24-10. So what do we think is going to happen this weekend? I don't know, but there's a pattern there, and that chart talks to me. But then the other thing I look at with the Rams is who've they beaten? Their best win this year was against the Bears, and the Bears were 5-1. And again, I love the Bears, but this is an awful Bears team that should not be 5-1. This Bears team is not going to finish the season with a winning record. They're going to finish the season at best 8-8, maybe 9-7. So that's the biggest win that the Rams has. Then when I look at Miami, here's what I see in Miami. And again, I'm going further into it than I want to, but Miami has 17 total sacks for the season. Not that, I mean, we're talking over the course of 6 games, so roughly 3 sacks a game. But 9 of them are in the last 2 weeks, and 11 of them are in the last 3 weeks. So this is a defense that's figuring themselves out. The first loss of the season came against New England without an offseason against a very well-coached team. We talked about that in week 1. The well-coached teams, the consistent teams, no new plans. Well, Miami is new across the board. So that New England loss in week 1 was to be expected. But other than that, Miami is not losing by huge margins. I like the way they played Buffalo. That was only a 3-point loss. The Seattle loss, that was still towards the beginning of the season, but I really like what Miami is doing on defense. When you go 9 sacks in 2 weeks of your 17 total for the season, and Fitzpatrick wasn't playing bad ball. Miami is running the ball really well. They're throwing the ball really well. I don't really know why they're making this move. I think it's probably because Fitzpatrick threw a couple picks last week, but now you're getting Tua, who this player has played in some huge games. It doesn't get any bigger than the way this man started his starting career at Alabama. He walked into the second half in Alabama in the national championship game, and it doesn't, as a freshman, as an 18-year-old freshman, the pressure of playing against the Rams, who are coming off of an overstated victory on a Monday Night Football game and now traveling across the country, there's no pressure on Tua, and he's mobile and smart. And most teams really struggle with left-handed quarterbacks. So I went into this game further than I needed to. So if you want to bet against me because of the jinx factor, I certainly don't blame you. But Tua was just a bonus for me. It was really Miami's defense and the way that the Rams respond to losses, and a lot of other stats and film that I looked at.
All right. Sounds good. Well, we're over our half an hour, so let's go ahead and just do a quick summary. And then, hey, what's the entry into Westgate?
I'd have to look at it. There's 3 different contests. At one point, I think the big one is like 10K. I think there's $1,000 entry. I don't know. I used to pay attention to it, but I always keep forgetting to enter.
Well, I'll tell you what, keep doing it as well as you're doing this year, and then we'll work something out for next year. How about that?
I'm in.
All right, sounds good, man.
And I'm gonna have probably tomorrow or Saturday when I do the sports betting weekly. I'll get that put up. I think I like to put that up because he's got some really smart opinions, and he's been doing this show a long time. And I'm forced to give an opinion on some games that I didn't put up as picks. The picks that I put up on this Discord page for everybody, I'm playing those. I mean, that's actually I'm not just throwing garbage at you guys, but there's games that I'm forced to give an opinion on when he starts asking. So I post that just because it gives everybody an opportunity to hear an opinion on another game too that you might have been thinking about.
Yeah, and I mean, we do that on stock stuff and options. I mean, we want everyone to make their own decision, but we just put out some info and hopefully they grab it.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. Well, thank you, and we'll see your picks, and then we'll talk next week.
Have a good week, everybody.
All right, man. You too.